going to talk about channeling and spiritual protection. And this is in response to a question I received a couple of days ago. The question is this: how do you overcome guilt and doubt about gifts like clairvoyance, having come from a Christian background? I was raised Christian and fear I might deal with the devil somehow accidentally. How do you test a spirit to know if its true purpose? Well, for me, it isn't about testing a spirit to know its true purpose. The important thing is that you start first with protecting your field. So what a lot of people don't realize is that our word is law, that we are the creators of our reality, and this vessel that we are in is ours. We can command who is and isn't allowed in our field. So when you first start channeling, when you first open up a channel, a lot of people are actually born with these gifts, and for whatever reason, we are afraid of them. Either something traumatic happened in childhood, or in my particular case, I was told that my spiritual gifts were evil. So I was terrified of my own gifts until about 10 years ago, when I decided it was time to start using them. Now, when you first open a channel to spirit, it's basically setting off a beacon of light that says, this one's open for receiving. So start getting messages from the light, but the open beacon also basically sends a message to the dark side as well. It says, here's a person who's open for messages. So tuning in and channeling messages is a lot like tuning a radio. So you have the frequency, right? There's, on a radio line, there's a frequency from really low on one end and really high on the other. Only in this case, it's a frequency that goes up and down instead of across. So you're tuning into particular channels on this frequency. So a lot of it has to do with where you hold your own frequency. If you're in a lot of fear and darkness yourself, you're going to tap into a lower frequency. This is where some of the old psychics used to tap into a lower frequency, seances and things like that. And then the higher you hold your own frequency, the higher your ability to tap all the way up into source. So a lot of it has to do with where you are personally in your own consciousness. And then you also have to be very, very specific about who is and isn't allowed in your field. Because if you're not clear about who is and isn't allowed in your field, then you may be accidentally inviting in nefarious entities and infiltration. So what's really important is that you protect your field. Now, for me, I do this a couple of times a day, in the morning when I get up and at night before I go to bed, which is something that I do for myself, and I kind of laugh because it, goes back to like saying your prayers first thing in the morning and at night, but it's basically doing the same thing. So I put myself in a bubble of protection. You can learn a little bit about this if you want to go on my website and pick up a copy of this invocation for protection that I have there for you. So anyway, what you want to do is to protect your field so that only the guardians that you call in specifically are allowed in. These are your guardians. If you're new at this, I recommend starting with just calling in your higher self. So your higher self is that aspect of your soul that isn't physically present. We are actually a stream of consciousness direct to source. So the higher self is your oversoul. Only a part of your soul is actually in this physical vessel. The rest of it is a stream of consciousness that goes all the way up to source. So if you think of yourself like a sunbeam, you kind of get an idea of what this is like. So only a part of our soul is in this body. The rest of it is the stream of consciousness up. So you can actually communicate with your higher self and get the answers that you need for whatever is going on in your life that you need direction from. You can also call in your guardian angels. If you know who your guardian angels are, you can call them in. You can call in and ask for specific ancestors. If there are people that you're particularly connected with, you can communicate with them. Again, be very clear that you're only calling in those specific people. Otherwise, if you just say, I have an open channel and I want to see what's coming in, you could get any kind of messages. The other thing to keep in mind is that the ego wants to filter everything. So a message that comes in, understand that spirit, your higher self is going to speak in a language you understand, but the guardians of light, ascended masters, they don't necessarily speak your specific language. So they're going to send you impressions, and then you have to try to decipher what those impressions are. So the ego gets involved and wants to translate those messages in a way that it understands. So one of the other things that I do is always ask my ego to set aside, so the message that comes in is pure divine inspiration without any kind of interpretations on my ego side. I command that there are no infiltrations that come in. I command that only the highest divine truth is what's allowed to enter my mind. And when I'm speaking with a particular entity, I ask to see his or her aura. Because here's the thing, there may be entities that can try to trick you into thinking that they're one of the good guys, but they cannot create auras. They don't have that capability because they only work in the dark. They can't create light. Only the actual light-based entities can create aura and show you their aura and be of the light. So the other thing that you can do is ask Archangel Michael to protect the communication, because that's part of his job as one of the protectors of this planet, to make sure that only the highest loving truth comes forward and that you only connect with loving entities who are here to teach you love and light specifically, that your mind is not accessible to anybody other than what you specifically call forward and who you specifically call forward. And otherwise, there's too much room for infiltration. So when you first open a channel, it's kind of interesting because the guardians get really excited that there's a new person they can communicate with. So when I first started channeling, I remember one day I was standing in my kitchen and I heard all these voices and I was like, wait, stop, one at a time. I cannot hear you all at the same time. So they kind of had to take turns communicating with me. So it's very exciting to be able to find another human on the ground that they can talk to. And what's really great about that is that those of us who have this ability to communicate, we then will bounce our messages off of each other to make sure that we're getting the same message. So there are a lot of us all across the planet that get almost identical messages. And that is a great, great confirmation that what we're getting is the same. I remember when I first started channeling, I would listen to Michael Beckwith at Agape Spiritual Center on Sunday mornings and hear that he was getting exactly the same messages that I was getting. It was such great confirmation to know that I was in that same stream that basically tapped into the same channel. So I hope that helps with that question, and then how to not be afraid of it. Just trust that when you're in this beautiful space of love and of spirit and in your own highest vibrations of loving, that what you're going to tap into is also love, what I call love streaming through me, love streaming through you, and that you have the ability to set the ground rules. Who is and isn't allowed in your field, who is and isn't allowed to communicate with you, and set protection around yourself so that that's the only thing that comes through. Now, with regard to guilt and shame about it, that's a little bit tougher because you have more than likely some beliefs from your childhood that you need to process through. And those are a little bit harder to work through. And that is something that I help people with as well. So if you're interested in having a personal session on how to work through some of those, I can help you with that as well. I hope that helps to answer some of those questions for you. And as always, if you like what you see and hear, please comment, like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, get bold, be fearless, and live free.